Director of American Factory, which won for Best Documentary. When she accepted her award, she said, "Things will get better when workers of the world unite." And that really resonated with me. And Parasite, which took home 11 awards and was the first international movie to win Best Picture, rightfully so, actually enacted change in South Korea. So obviously in Parasite it focuses on class struggle and the difference between working class families versus non-working class families. And in the movie it shows the family's apartment, which is in a basement, and the housing conditions of the poor in South Korea obviously aren't great. The living conditions of the poor in any country are not great because there's health violations, code violations like for fire safety and things. In the movie, the basement apartment floods. Reality for a lot of people living in working class conditions and the global poor. And because of the basement apartments that were brought to light in the movie, the government will financially support 1,500 households living conditions which are in semi-basements. And this will go to enhance heating systems, replace floors, and install air conditioners, as well as humidifiers, ventilators, windows, and fire alarms. And when people have a better quality of life, they just are happier in general, but their physical health improves. They won't have black mold or mildew growing spores, which can agitate people's allergies. If you're working in a factory or a low-income job, you are not given sick leave and you aren't given like maternity leave or anything else, but sick leave, especially if you have strain on your physical health as well as your mental health, you cannot work well. So having a home that can provide you with like the bare minimum of a safe living environment that won't make you sick and cause you to take more time off from work will lead to people living longer, healthier, happier lives. As a whole, will benefit communities. So I think it's great, not only that Parasite won, but that it brought to light the living conditions in Seoul, and that now the government is doing something about it. As antibiotics become less effective against viruses, it leads to more superbugs. And these superbugs aren't affected by antibiotics anymore because they're so overused. So you have superbugs that have the potential to like infect thousands and millions of people, and modern Western medicine has no way to combat it. In the ocean, kill 20% of marine surface bacteria every 24 hours. Today, antibiotics make up 262 million treatments in 2011, and about 100,000 to 200,000 tons of antibiotics are used between agriculture, medicine, and horticulture, which costs $100 trillion and will kill 10 million people by 2050. The CDC estimates that antibiotic-resistant infections cost $55 billion annually and infect 2 million people while killing 23,000 a year. Another study by the UK Antimicrobial Resistance Review in 2016 found that an estimated 700,000 people die globally per year, costing $100 trillion. And by 2050, this number will jump to 10 million people. Biotic-resistant drugs are a huge issue, and just by like the numbers alone is a global health crisis. And phages are a great alternative to antibiotics. With antibiotics, the more you use them, the more resistant bugs will arise, just because they become immune to it, and it's not like a one solution fix or one fit fix. Each virus needs to have its own antibiotic, and then the next year that strain can be resistant. Phages are diverse, non-living biological entities that are made up of DNA and RNA, enclosed within a protein capsule. As the parasites of the bacteria, they cannot reproduce without a host, and they kill their host cells by injecting them with genetic material and produce phage progeny. So like baby phage, they make phages in the cell to the point where it bursts, and then the cycle just repeats. So then those phage go into other host cells nearby, infect them, pop, and it just continues to kill a virus that way. In a study from 1931 using phage as a treatment for cholera in the Punjab region of India, a study of 118 control subjects and 73 experimental subjects, they observed 90% reduction of mortality of the ones who received a phage therapy treatment. This was in a study in 1931. The storage of phage is very particular. They have to be kept alive, and they're made in batches. So each batch has to be made exactly the same in order for the phage to be able to kill the host cell, whatever it is. So there's an example of them doing that with cholera. And the storage, former Soviet Union and Eastern European countries have mastered phage therapy. They've been using it for over 100 years, and it's really popular in Eastern Europe, but in Western medicine, there's been a lot of resistance to phage therapy. The reason being that it is immensely disruptive to big pharma and Western medicine. But in another trial with mice who had gut-derived sepsis, phage treatment saved 66.7% from mortality compared to 0% in the control group. And as of today, phage is not approved as therapy in the EU or the US. So FDA regulation is really slowing the progress of phage therapy. And it's harder to receive phage therapy in the United States versus Eastern Europe, even though there have been studies that show it's effective in mice and humans, so that phage can be used as an affordable way to save people's lives instead of having people continue to die from lack of health care. Or the rates of death from disease, and I don't think people should have to wait on the FDA to approve phage therapy for regulation, simply because the FDA is an institution that is very invested in the titans of big pharma. Like, for example, insulin is a life-saving treatment that's extremely expensive in the US. It can is $500 plus compared to other countries around the world where it's either paid for by the government or the copay is much lower. But when people have very serious bacterial infections and they need to go to a hospital, a lot of them aren't opting to go to a hospital because they can't afford it. Within Indigenous land, Coastal GasLink has been trying to construct a pipeline on unceded Wet'suwet'en territory. They have been blockading workers, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police have been called in to enforce the BC Supreme Court's judgment. Coastal GasLink had signed an agreement with Indigenous councils, but the hereditary chiefs claim rights over the land. In Coquitlam, protesters have camped on the tracks of the Canadian Pacific Rail Yard, shutting down the West Coast Express. have occupied the office of Winnipeg MP Dan Vandal for 11 days. They have also stopped CN Railway, and protesters at Belleville, Ontario have held up railroad traffic. Trudeau has cancelled his trip to Barbados on February 16th, and on the 17th he meets with the incident response group. And for the Indigenous people who have lived there for thousands of years and have had to fight the government to keep their culture alive and keep their lands safe, they've been fighting corporate interests for a really long time. And it's not just unique to Canada. The land defenders in the Amazon, also, and Indigenous people there have been fighting deforestation, and it's usually in the form of like wanting to have cattle graze on the territory, mining, or taking oil out of the ground. And natural gas itself pollutes local water and leaks methane into the environment. So it's more than just a pipeline going through land. It's a form of genocide to take away people's access to clean water. In the past, their children are forced to go to these boarding schools where they're tortured and beaten and raped and like forced to give up their traditional culture to adopt a more Christian lifestyle. Solidarity groups have been focusing attention on the Wet'suwet'en struggle with the Canadian government. And there have been a few incidences between police and demonstrators on the pathway to one of the camps by Coastal GasLink. They like had to stop their cars, and a woman was beaten up and like dragged out of her car by police. And some people may say that like they're inconveniencing white Canadians, and they are slowing down infrastructure, causing job losses, affecting the economy. But I mean, they have been victim to the Canadian government doing the same thing to them. The idea behind protesting on train tracks and in Toronto and all across Canada is to bring attention to the atrocities that the Canadian government is leading against Indigenous people. If you're going to steal their land and pollute their water, then why shouldn't they be slowing down other aspects of Canadian life for white Canadians? Indigenous issues are everyone's issues. You shouldn't just view it as like an isolated protest, but to say that it's they're thugs or to minimalize them or dehumanize them is exactly the point of the protest. White supremacy operates in a variety of ways, economically, culturally.
I'm pretty sure if we want to go through your vehicle, we can find some reason to impound it if we needed to.
Fair enough.
Why are you asking the passenger in this car all these questions?
You're not giving me information that I could check on a database.
Where I'm not supposed to be in Canada, but I am a Canadian citizen and I don't have dual citizenship. So I'm just being arrested for that right now.
And what were we pulled over for?
Because I thought you might be driving.
They were stalking us. I honestly think that you may have made that up, and I can give you a lawyer. It's Sergo 6, who we see multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Are you under arrest? I was under arrest, and they handcuffed me, put me in the back, and then a minute later realize that they can't make me inadvisable to Canada because I am a Canadian citizen.
Uh-huh.
Signed an agreement with 20 elected Indigenous leaders, not the hereditary chiefs, for Indigenous leaders around the world to kind of be leading the movement against climate change is very hypocritical, especially of liberal politicians who claim to care about global warming and the climate crisis while also taking money from gas corporations as well. Trudeau has come out saying that he supports Indigenous groups, but government doesn't pay them or doesn't give them money back for the land that they have stolen. So there's an economic burden placed on them that way. And then gas corporations and helping to expand the use of natural gas through pipelines. In Syria, that was like the main reason for war there. The pipeline that was going through the country would reduce the cost of natural gas in Russia. But
Ei, tô precisando falar com você. Será que você tem tempinho pra me dar?
Tá mandando aí.
É que eu sou virgem e queria que você me descabaçasse.
Eu tô pelo morrão com o DJ do baile aberto, um baseado. Tá ligado, né, puto? Que aqui tá tudo bem, monitorado ponta a ponta e lado a lado. Passa nada, porra. É que hoje tem baile, nós fica suave. As piranhas já sabem que o fundo serra aqui. Vem que nós tá mequetrefe do lado do chefe. O Fogos avisou que o baile vai fluir. E aí, DJ, manda pra ela, cara. Aturou surta. Quando o trem bala passa, ela fica maluca. De cabelo enrolado e a Glock na cintura. Hoje nós tá pras foda e elas querem entrar. Quer entrar na vara, ficou surtada. De maconha, de lança e de balinha. Arrasta elas pra base e taquei na novinha. Elas só quer o quê? Hoje elas quer o quê? Eu tô pelo morrão com o DJ do baile aberto, um baseado. Tá ligado, né, puto? Que aqui tá tudo bem, monitorado ponta a ponta e lado a lado. Passa nada, porra. É que hoje tem baile, nós fica suave. As piranhas já sabem que o fundo serra aqui. Vem que nós tá mequetrefe do lado do chefe. O Fogos avisou que o baile vai fluir. E aí, DJ, manda pra ela, cara. Aturou surta. Quando o trem bala passa, ela fica maluca. De cabelo enrolado e a Glock na cintura. Hoje nós tá pras foda e